attempts to censor medical practitioners in the NHS through smearing and doxing. We've talked about doxing before, but there's a fight back going on, and I've got two doctors on the call. I'm really pleased to have them both coming on live. Nadim, are you there, Nadim?
I'm there. Morning, Crispin. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us, and also joining us is Rahmeh.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thanks to everybody who is watching.
Well, look, thank you both for coming on. Look, I'm just going to show a clip of you first, Nadim. This is on your crowdfunder because you're trying to raise money for your legal case. We'll talk about that after.
I put through the Freedom of Information request, or the SAR request, and here comes a redacted email saying, essentially, I'm disgusted with Nadim Crow's social media posts on the Gaza conflict. He's anti-Semitic. So I was being accused of anti-Semitism, but that was withheld from me in this meeting. And then I get the posts. Within my posts, they had been cut out or cropped in a way that the context was not there, so I don't know who I was responding to. But I told Elon Levy that he would be better getting a job in regional panto. I had retweeted the video of the rape of the prisoner at the State Taman prison and said to somebody, this is the scum that you're defending. I stand by that. Rape equals scum, no question. Somebody had been talking about either Hezbollah or Palestinians, or because apparently all Palestinians are terrorists, as terrorists, and I responded saying, sure, call them terrorists, but remember the terrorism enacted by, the Zionist movement and also, the IDF. You can't say that's terrorism, but that's not terrorism because it suits you, because it suits the West, because it suits us all. I pointed out that the IDF kill babies and are rapists. This is all truths. These are truths that I can reference over and over and over again. And I'd also said that this genocide will go down in Israeli and Jewish history, and that is a fact. It will. But that is not a judgment call. That's not a good thing. That is not something to be proud of. You've got fantastic Jewish people marching in the street saying that this is wrong, having their history tainted by this genocide, by a group of people that think killing is fine and it's just and it's appropriate. And I can tell you that it's not. And if you think that it is, why the hell are you working in healthcare treating people? Are we at the point now where our Palestinian staff have to pretend they're not Palestinian or they don't have a flag? They can't have a badge of their flag. They can't have a phone case with the Palestinian flag on because their own country, where they were born, where they're from, is a sign of hate. And the insanity of it is that we have people being protected when their belief is that mass, indiscriminate killing of children can be just. And those people are being protected and pushing people like me and others out of their honourable work within the NHS.
Your crowdfunder, I've put a link up for it there, and your video is very detailed about what happened with your position in your work at the Royal Free Hospital. Can you tell us how many other people have got in touch with you who are in the NHS who've experienced similar issues to you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, when the video went out, I knew that it would get a reaction, but I didn't realize how sort of far spread that this problem was. And I heard from people really all over the country with varying cases of severity. A few being suspended, some being suspended locally within their trusts, some being suspended by the GMC, like Dr. Hiana Ali, who now doesn't have an income and can't do her work for 18 months. Cases like obviously Ranjit Brar, who was arrested multiple times. Rahmeh's case, nurses, etc. But I think the thing to me that was the most important thing I learned was the amount of fear that exists in all of these people about coming forward to actually say, this happened. People are scared to say that they've been a victim of this harassment and doxing. And what became really obvious to me was the fact that I'm not frightened, was that I had to put my head above the parapet to represent all of these people.
Yeah, and you were told that if you took your tweets down, then your suspension would be lifted. But
Well, the thing is, Crispin, if I had been told that, then it would be remotely acceptable, and that was the non-truth told by the responsible officer, Dr. Haddadin, to NHS England. I was not given a way out. In fact, in that meeting, me and my colleague both left still not knowing what the accusation was. And I left that meeting having been told to delete the posts, but not tying the deletion of the posts to the end of my suspension or being tied to me coming back to work. It was delete the posts and you will also be investigated. But when I deleted the posts, something miraculous happened between 6 p.m. that night and 8 o'clock the next morning, which meant that, you know, that was enough to get me back to work. But I have to say, the colleague that I had to do my going back to work meeting said to me that Dr. Haddadin had never been Nadimed before, the verb to Nadim, apparently. And I read that as nobody had ever been able to stand up to her harassment, because that's what it was. I was being put on the spot. I'd been ambushed into a meeting, and I'd been able to sit there and say, what you're doing is wrong. You know it's wrong. Every question I asked was responded with a stammer. And when I particularly went back and said, is this an outward discrimination from a very Jewish hospital trust? We can't deny it serves Northwest London. We have a huge number of Jewish patients. I've served there for 15 years without a single complaint. And I think that all of that pushed her into believing that this was going to become an ugly scenario. And my gut feeling, and this is only my feeling, I can't say that this is, you know, the reality, was that I, by deleting the posts, gave the trust an off-ramp to end it. We've got an outcome and we can end the investigation. He can come back to work and we can pretend this didn't happen. That's to this day what I believe really happened.
Right. So, and the thing that's so impressive about your video, if everyone watches it, is your determination to get justice on this and your legal battle. I mean, you're really doing an amazing job putting your head, as you say, on the parapet here. Can you tell us what your case is, what you're doing, what this fundraiser is for?
Absolutely. So the slight complexity of my life is that though I've been a doctor for many years, I've also worked in the West End as an actor for many years, and I work as a perfumer. So there was a point in my medical career where I didn't want to commit full time to medicine because, you know, I was sort of during the day working in A&E or in geriatric medicine and then going off to the West End to do School of Rock. So I've always worked as a bank worker. And for people who don't know what that is, it means that I don't have a permanent fixed position, but I work in A&E and I book my hours usually a month ahead. And then, you know, for example, I have to go for an audition, I can give a certain amount of notice and go off and do it. Now, after a certain amount of time, your kind of, I guess, on paper relationship with a trust or with an employer doesn't actually represent the true relationship. I've worked there for 15 years. I've worked in A&E for 7. I've worked 30 or 40 hours a week. I do consultant cover. I teach. I represent an employee at that trust. And the way the Royal Free treated me by ignoring my grievance, ignoring all of the complaints, not having any policies that applied, and the fact that I decided it was a hostile environment to work in after this means that the first thing I'm saying is that this is constructive, you know, dismissal. I've been there for 15 years and now can't go back to my regular place of work. The other thing is that I'm a British Jordanian who's held anti-Zionist views for all of my life, all of my conscious life. And I do not believe that a trust can suddenly come along and say, well, if you speak your truths and if you speak your, you know, the things that you've believed all your life and you speak against genocide and crimes against humanity, we believe that one anonymous complainant needs to be protected from you. And I only saw this last week in the freedom of information request I did via NHS England. It was because they thought the strength of my language might be a risk to patients or fellow staff and be upsetting. What I find miraculous about that is that it's not what I said that should be upsetting to people. It's the fact that prisoners are being raped. That's the upsetting bit. Children are being murdered. That's the upsetting bit. Me saying it is not the upsetting bit. So I'm also claiming for harassment and discrimination, be that indirect or direct. I believe both. but we'll have to see what unfolds in court. But I mean, the ridiculous thing is the Royal Free had an opportunity to respond to my grievance within the 5 days that they dictate on their policy. I had no response, absolutely nothing, you know, to this day. So if they really feel that they had a justified case, why didn't they just come and explain that to me? That's my question.
Right. I mean, look, I'm just going to move on to Rahmeh, because your situation is a bit different. Thank you for agreeing to come on the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm well. I'm well, thank you. I'm much better than a couple of weeks ago.
Well, look, I'll just show a short version of your Instagram post, which has got a lot of views and people are sharing it all over the place. So I'll just share this edited version here.
I have dealt with 16 months of attacks, from being doxed on Nasher Jew to the UK LFI using my Nasher Jew profile to report me to the GMC, to a Jewish Chronicle reporter threatening to report me as anti-Semitic, to Physicians Against Anti-Semitism posting constantly about me, to 9 months of the GMC investigation, and being at least a year to a year and a half behind in my career than where I should be, to now this. I have persevered, but I am also a human. It has not been easy. And every time I cry, I remember one martyred child or a mother of a martyr, and it fills me with determination and resistance. So please don't let them scare you into silence because of me, because they haven't managed to scare me into it. Please let this empower you. If you're speaking out, continue. If you haven't, you decide what choice of yours history will remember. Whether it's silence in the face of the most documented genocide in history, or your clear stance for humanity. Sabrina, I did not get any communication from you before you printed me. This is defamation, and I will be taking legal action. As anti-Arab, Palestinian and Muslim hatred is on the rise, you are putting me, a British citizen and an NHS doctor, at risk for a genocidal foreign state responsible for the murder of over 70% of journalists worldwide in the past year, as well as the most amount of children. Free the over 11,000 Palestinian hostages in occupation torture camps, and free Palestine.
It's a very powerful video, and obviously I had to cut it a bit because there's a lot of explanation about your situation. That, I mean, it's quite complicated because you were attacked by all sorts of people, and the thing is, you haven't lost your job. The GMC found that you hadn't done anything wrong. So, what's the situation now? What can you tell us about this legal case you've got?
Yeah, so I had found out that, the GMC concluded that there was no evidence that I'm an anti-Semite. So that was 3 days before they printed that Daily Mail sort of defamatory piece. And obviously, Sabrina didn't reach out to me for any comment. And it's clear defamation. I mean, after 18 months now, 17 months of this genocide, or a larger scale of the genocide of the Palestinians, we know very well what the Zionist side would do if you speak out against them, if you speak out against Jewish supremacy, against the apartheid, against genocide. They will call you an anti-Semite. They will say that they're afraid, or that Jewish people are afraid because you're saying what you're saying. Or they'll say that you support terrorism. So obviously in that article, they hit the trifecta with me. They said all of those things. So it's clearly defamation. The Jewish Chronicle also then printed an article on the Wednesday following the Daily Mail, but they seem to have removed it by themselves because I think they must have gotten some advice that was also going to become a defamation case.
Have you had lots of messages of support? What's your experience with the repercussions of that article and the attacks on you?
So when the article came out, actually, a lot of people didn't know So when I posted that I was going to respond to the article, at first I was hit with a storm of attacks by the sort of pro-Israel, pro-genocide lobby. And that night of those attacks, where my details, private information about me, death threats, rape threats, were coming my way from everywhere. And you had, campaign against anti-Semitism, you had Nicole Lampert, you had Nature Jew, everybody, posting this about me. And I think they were trying to intimidate me so that I don't post the video that you just showed, because I said I was going to reveal who my colleague was. But then I posted about it, and I would say I've had hundreds of messages, tens and tens of calls of support from some people I hadn't even spoken to since uni, which is, a decade ago. Some people from secondary school, and I think a lot of people who might not have been very aware of what's happening when they saw that, oh, this was my neighbor, this was my primary school friend, this is an NHS doctor, I know Rahmeh, I grew up with her, I worked with her, I played rugby with her at uni. Why is she in the Daily Mail? Why is the police coming to her house to make sure that her life is not in danger? So I think that made them sort of start to question, okay, yeah, Palestine is far away, but this is happening here to people like us, to Brits.
Yeah, in your video, you make it a point that you've got a choice. You don't have to speak out about this. You can keep it to yourself and stuff. But it seems from both of your experience that actually speaking out has been the best thing you could have done, and not holding it back and trying to put your head down. What would you say to that? Do you want to, Rahmeh?
Yeah, I would say that I didn't have a choice. My grandmother is Palestinian, and my great-granddad was kicked out by the occupiers from his land. I have family who've never been able to go back. So I don't have a choice but to speak from an ancestral indigenous side, but also as who I am as a person and a doctor. If this was occurring anywhere, this was happening in France, in the anywhere across the world, I would still say genocide. I think, what? I have a Christian Palestinian friend who lives in Canada, and she posted, she's a therapist, so, healthcare, and she posted that it is wild that we have to have groups called Doctors Against Genocide, because shouldn't just doctors be against genocide? And that's the ludicrous nature of what's happening. So I didn't feel like I had a choice to do it or not. I think it has affected me negatively. I can't lie. I can't say it's the best thing that's happened to me, but I would go back and do exactly the same, if not do more. And I think one of the main reasons why this is happening to me, Nadim, to Rihanna, she's got a petition to try and get herself reinstated by the GMC. So if we can share that and people can just sign it, that would be amazing. You've got 18 months there of suspension. It takes us days and days to get a neurologist to come and review patients in the hospital. We're understaffed, and you've got a Cambridge educated neurology consultant suspended for 18 months. It's really not okay. But anyway, I think one of the main reasons that this is happening to us is also the silence of a lot of people. So there is a bit of responsibility there, because I think we should stand all together.
Yeah. What would you say, Nadim, to that? Has this changed you in your perspective on politics and how things are done, and what speaking out means, the importance of solidarity and stuff like that?
Similar to Rahmeh, my whole family live in Jordan, and this is not something that I woke up one day and thought, this is what I think. It's what I've always thought. I think the key reason that healthcare workers are being targeted is that because we're looked at as these very moral, largely intelligent people with a good sense of humanity, we are prime target to silence, because if we're standing up, as healthcare workers and saying what Israel are doing is wrong, it's very bad PR for Israel. So we are a key target. Shut the doctors up. The other thing is that the kind of dehumanization, the ethnic cleansing, all of this, the silencing that we've seen with Al Jazeera being closed, in Palestine and the West Bank, with the Palestinian flag being, illegal within the occupied territories, etc. Essentially, all of the things that the military law that Palestinians live under is just being moved and shifted here. I was looking after a doctor who was fled from Gaza. He was under siege at the Al-Shifa hospital for 40 days with a baby that was 1 month old. And he is working at the Royal Free Hospital. And yet he's working in an environment where when I point out the genocide of his people, I get suspended to protect an anonymous person who's fearful. If I worked treating patients in a very, very Jewish demographic for 15 years, and I've had nothing but compliments about my care. In fact, Jane Horden said in my disciplinary meeting, I've never heard anything but good things about you, Nadim, and that you're an excellent doctor, but that doesn't matter now. If that one complaint trumps my 15 years of practice, and none of these people, the usual offenders, UK Lawyers for Israel, Nasha Jew, Sabrina Miller, Labour Against Anti-Semitism, if none of those people are able to bring one example of a pro-Palestine doctor who's actually caused harm, then they really need to consider what they're achieving. All they're doing is saying that because we support the people of Palestine, because we're educated in the history, that we are potentially of risk to patients. I read UK Lawyers for Israel wrote to Curry's PC World to say that a Jewish customer couldn't buy their TV from them because somebody was wearing a badge. I'm sorry, this is now getting utterly ridiculous. And if I see my face in the Telegraph written by Sabrina Miller, I just want to talk out more and more and more, because the people that matter and have got the opinions that are moral and align with humanity, they're going to look at that and say, good on you, Nadim, you're standing up for the right thing. So what is there to be fearful of? There is nothing to be afraid of when you stand up for the truth. The problem in our situation, Crispin, is that one of the hardest things since I put that video out is that I felt like a pawn amongst the people that want to fight this fight without putting their head above the parapet. And there are groups doing amazing work, don't get me wrong, and they're really, really supportive. But the minute somebody puts their head up and says, okay, I'll be the poster boy for this, or Rahmeh will be the poster girl, they want to push you around the argument in the way that wins the battle for them, through some elements of censorship still, or some elements of don't say this or do say this and don't say that. My opinion, as this has gone on, there is no point battling for freedom of speech and for truth if we're now at this point going to continue to censor ourselves. I will not work for the NHS anymore. I've made a decision. I can't go back. NHS England defended and couldn't justify what had happened to me at the Royal Free. And as far as I'm concerned, I was a bloody good doctor. I still am a bloody good doctor. This country and the NHS have lost me. And whose fault is that? Is it mine? Absolutely not, because I've got 15 years of absolutely exemplary care behind me. And what really upsets me is that all of these clinical cases we see where we're asked to comment on an X-ray that's been interpreted wrong, or a patient that came to harm because a doctor hadn't enacted their care properly, none of these people get suspended. When actual harm is caused to people, there's no suspension. You call out a genocide in Israel, we think you might be at risk to patients. That is utter rubbish. And if that is the scenario that I have to go back and work in, stuff it. I won't be a doctor. I'm a bright guy. I'm an eloquent guy. I'll go find another job. I just cannot live my life working in humanity, looking after people, caring for people, if the kind of confines that I have to operate in is this level of moral depravity that is so below my own. Then I've got much more integrity than that. I'll do something else. I'll go work in a shop. I don't care. But I am not going to change my moral standing to keep a few people who are malicious and aggressive. And let's face it, UK Lawyers for Israel is 5 or 6 people sitting in a room going, ha ha ha, we got this done, we got that done. They're just hiding behind a brand, Nasha Jew, may he be David Collier or whoever he is. This guy gets 10 hits on his website a day. They are not powerful. They are malicious. And I just don't care anymore. I'll speak out until the last breath I take.